This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about how MicroStrategy, how strategy MSTR could go to zero. And of course, we're talking about this company that's been very successful building up a huge amount of Bitcoin on its balance sheet. And I'll put a link to this description page. We're not just talking about MSTR going to zero, we're talking about all the derivatives and all the different parts of the capital structure like Strike and Strife, etc., or if you're a convertible bond holder as well. And to be very clear, this is not a Saylor bashing video. I think Saylor has done a tremendous amount for the Bitcoin community, and I've personally learned a lot from listening to his interviews and podcasts with him. And the irony is not lost on me that it took an actual engineer from MIT to come up with what is perhaps the greatest feat of financial engineering ever, which is using a corporation's capital structure, as he's been doing, to divert capital flows mostly away from the bond market and into Bitcoin. And I think Saylor will be remembered for this forever and probably for a whole lot more. But my concern here is different. The concern is this: why is my comment section increasingly being flooded with questions about whether someone should buy Strife or Strike or MSTY or MSTX or MSTR? And these people asking the questions are not institutional investors, whom I consider to be the real audience for most of these tickers, especially things like Strife and Strike. I feel like a lot of Bitcoin plebs have completely lost the plot over the past 12 months and really forgotten why we're here. We're not here to outperform the S&P 500. We're not here even to quote-unquote outperform Bitcoin. We're here to hold a bearer asset that we control ourselves, that's not trapped inside of a brokerage account, and that we can send to anyone in the world without having to ask permission. We're here to defeat the central bankers, to end fiat money, and usher in a new era of human flourishing. Because there's no point being wealthy if you live in a fiat prison, in a digital prison. And this is why freedom money is just as important as having a lot of purchasing power. So that at least is why I'm here in Bitcoin, and I'd still be running Trader University if those other things still interested me, like the capital structure of corporations. But they don't interest me that much anymore. And even if you love and own MSTR, here's what you need to remind yourself of daily. If Bitcoin fails, then obviously MSTR fails as well. Question: could Bitcoin still fail? That's actually the kind of stupid FUD that I've been fighting on this channel for years and years and years. And so when Jamie Dimon says that Bitcoin's going to zero, for example, I think you can safely ignore it because he's just a propagandist for central bankers. But now in 2025, I'm sad to say that I do think that Bitcoin could still fail unless we turn things around. Now here's the future that we definitely do not want to have. People using Goldman Sachs to send Bitcoin to their friend's account at JP Morgan. People using Coinbase to send Bitcoin to other Coinbase customers. These transactions, these kind of transactions, will rarely touch the chain itself, the layer one itself, but will rather be simple internal transfers. And settling large transactions between Goldman and JP Morgan may still hit the chain, and the chain may still end up being a very good settlement layer, but this may not be as common as we think it may be. And now if you combine this nightmare scenario, most people using payment rails other than the Bitcoin network itself, with the proliferation of spam on the Bitcoin network, and you end up with a nightmarish future that actually looks a lot like today. Lots of junk on chain and very few native monetary transactions. Here's a block from 15 hours ago. Even though mempool.space tells you that it's healthy, I'd have to look up what this health measurement is. This is not my personal idea of what a healthy block looks like, where you've got just a bunch of inscriptions here, and then you've got just a few monetary transactions, and the block has some space in it too. It's half empty. Or we can look at this block from about 2 hours ago, and this block is almost completely empty, but it just has some spam in it, some inscriptions, it looks like. If Bitcoiners are going to be asleep at the wheel, asleep at the switch when it comes to filtering out spam, and if Bitcoiners just sit around hodling Bitcoin and MSTR and never bother using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, then transaction fees will remain low as they are today, and large publicly traded miners will continue to spam the chain in order to meet their quarterly earnings, since they're not making enough money from packaging up real monetary transactions. This combination of Bitcoin spam and low medium of exchange activity could prove to be a deadly combination that actually kills Bitcoin. If you're finding this video interesting so far, please help to support this channel's educational mission. Hit the subscribe button, that does really help. Leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video, and share this video with a friend or family member. So right now, Bitcoin is indeed failing to scale. I think I can say that, but it's not because Bitcoin maxis are being mean and not giving devs the opcodes that they need to scale Bitcoin on higher layers like a layer 2. Bitcoin is failing to scale right now because no one's actually using it. HODLing, of course, is a use case. I do agree with that, but Bitcoin needs to grow also as a medium of exchange. As the joke goes, these are two sides of the same coin, store value and medium of exchange. Bitcoin is failing not because blocks are full and transaction fee pressure is really high, as is the concern of some devs in the industry, but rather because Bitcoiners have lost the plot and are using Bitcoin mostly just as a savings device. Big problem, of course, is the capital gains treatment of Bitcoin in the US and elsewhere. In the US, when you exchange your Bitcoin for fiat or goods and services, you'll probably owe a capital gains tax on its fiat price appreciation since you bought it. That's really bad, which is why I've said repeatedly on this channel that removing the capital gains tax on Bitcoin is much, much more important than anything like a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And so I think we need to redirect a lot of that energy that's been going into the SBR and states SBRs. We need to redirect this toward the medium of exchange discussion. I wish Trump and Lummis understood this and prioritized it. Lummis may understand it. I'm not sure Trump understands any part of this sort of debate. These politicians are probably not coming to save us, though I am grateful that Trump saved Ross Ulbricht, which is the main reason that I voted for him. Future of Bitcoin is in the hands, not of politicians, but in the hands of plebs like you. So the question is, what can you do? There are a couple of things you can do. You can try selling goods and services and exchanging your labor as well for Bitcoin as much as you can. This is really, really important for Bitcoin's future. Buy goods and services using Bitcoin. You don't have to spend your cold storage stash. Instead, you can buy $100 worth of Bitcoin whenever you need it, spend it, and then replace it with more sats later. This is what people like Matt Odell have been talking about for years, the spend and replace strategy. Common response, I'm never spending my Bitcoin. I'm spending my dirty fiat instead. And I used to say things like that too on this channel, but the thing is, money is fungible. I'm going to assume that you're currently earning US dollars or similar currency every month, and that you have monthly bills like rent, mortgage, groceries, etc., like the rest of all human beings. So here's what you can do to help Bitcoin scale. You can try to get people to pay you in Bitcoin instead of US dollars. That's what I do on my website, but very few people still use it. If you go here, you can see pay with Bitcoin. And if you click on that, you will see that you have the option. You can put an email address here, and then you have the option of either paying using Bitcoin on chain or using Bitcoin Lightning. You can set this up in a more self-sovereign manner using BTC Pay Server, and this is good for on-chain payments. I was struggling with the Lightning piece of it, which is why I went with Zaprite. This is an easy way to add Bitcoin functionality to your website and accept payments in fiat as well as in Bitcoin on-chain and Lightning as well. And so I think they're doing a great job at Zaprite. I like their product, not being paid by them or anything to talk about it. I just am using it on my site. So try to earn Bitcoin, try to spend Bitcoin, or do the spend and replace strategy to the extent that you can. Try to contribute to the Bitcoin circular economy where you yourself and your family are both earning Bitcoin and spending some of the Bitcoin that you earn. You can go out and buy wine from Ben in Colorado at Peony Lane using Bitcoin. You can buy beef from Jason, Rich Ranch is also in Colorado, or you could use the BTC map to find places either online or near where you live where you can support merchants that accept Bitcoin. And if you're a merchant, you should definitely accept Bitcoin. This is extremely, extremely important. And you have no excuse now why not to accept Bitcoin, because you can just set up Zaprite and it's really, really easy. What else can you do to safeguard Bitcoin's future? This is the most important thing. Run your own Bitcoin node. Use it to buy things using Bitcoin. Don't use someone else's node to send your Bitcoin transactions. And if you run a node and don't actually use it for your own economic activity, that's really just a giant LARP. If plebs don't run their own nodes, the whole networks can become dependent on large corporate nodes run by Coinbase and JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo and PayPal and all these companies that we are trying to get away from. These actors cannot be relied on to run good Bitcoin software that enforces the 21 million cap and that doesn't censor transactions. How do I know? Because I see how they behave today, and they're all bad actors. And even if they were good actors, centralization always leads to the failure or corruption of a system. Bitcoin is the only large monetary network in the world where a lot of plebs run their own nodes. This doesn't happen in Ethereum. It does not happen in Cardano. It really doesn't happen anywhere else except for Bitcoin, at least on the scale of Bitcoin. There may be some very small niche cryptocurrencies that do that, but Bitcoin is the only game in town that's doing this at the global level. Virtually no one runs a node in Ethereum because it's too expensive and technically complicated, as we said. Instead, they outsource it to Infura and AWS. And when Infura goes down, then exchanges have to halt withdrawals, as we saw a couple years ago. The future of Bitcoin is in the hands of you and me, the plebs. We cannot rely on Bitcoin core devs to protect us from spam. We cannot rely on Coinbase to store our Bitcoin and give us permission to send a transaction. We cannot rely on large publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies to do the right thing. Companies like Mara, which voluntarily decided they were going to kiss the government's boots and produce OFAC compliant blocks. Then they decided they were going to mine Caspa and try to support another network whose success would completely undermine the Bitcoin network. So they're not very bright or internally consistent, and they're continuing to spam the chain. This is something that Mara decided to drop on the chain in the midst of this whole controversy. This is an inscription. This is spam. This doesn't belong on the chain. This is not a monetary transaction. So do you think that unethical actors like Mara and Coinbase are going to go to bat for you for the 21 million cap in Bitcoin when they can't even figure out that you shouldn't be mining Caspa when you're a Bitcoin company and you shouldn't be also spamming the chain? Do you think they're going to go to bat for you for the 21 million cap? Of course not. They are all fiat maxis or shitcoiners at these companies. If you're a Bitcoin pleb and owner of MSTR or Strife or MSTY or Strike or any of these, and you're not also running a node and using Bitcoin as much as possible as a medium of exchange, then you are putting your MSTR investment at huge risk. Doesn't matter how much of the 21 million cap Saylor is able to accumulate, that supply cap means nothing unless you and I are enforcing it. The good news is that it looks like MSTR is running their own node now as well. They're running an instance of mempool.space. We can see the strategy logo up here. So that's a great thing to see, and it's cool they're publicizing it. I would be curious, though, to hear if strategy is helping to fight spam with their node. We need every node that cares about Bitcoin to be doing this. And if they care about MSTR's future valuation, they really should be on the side of helping to fight spam. By the way, you should not type any Bitcoin addresses. There's this box here where you could type a Bitcoin address that you control. Do not type any Bitcoin addresses that you control into this site or into mempool.space, or you may be ending up tying your IP address to one of your Bitcoin addresses, which could be really bad for your privacy. So you have to be, I'm not saying that strategy is doing this, but when someone's running an instance of mempool.space, you have to assume that they're collecting data or watching what people put in there. So be very careful of this. If you run your own Start9 server or Umbrel server, you can run your own instance of mempool.space, as I do. So it looks like Saylor's company is running a node now. Remember that your node is just as important as Saylor's node. So don't let Saylor run a node for you. Don't let mempool.space run a node for you. Don't let Trezor or Coinbase run a node for you. You need to run your own node. And if there's ever a real civil war in Bitcoin and Saylor ends up being on the wrong side, then your node may turn out to be much more important to all of us than Saylor's node is. When you're running a node and participating in consensus, then you're helping to keep Saylor and MSTR honest, and you're helping to keep me honest as well. You're helping to keep other Bitcoiners honest as well. In conclusion, if you focus only on MSTR and the digital gold narrative, the SBR, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, and the whole store of value narrative to the exclusion of everything else, you will end up inadvertently destroying Bitcoin's 21 million cap, thus its valuation, and also its censorship resistance. Pretty please, Goldman Sachs, may I please move my coins? Thank you so much. This is what a lot of people in the UK and Europe have to resort to now, moving their coins around if they're relying on third parties. Pretty please, Bitcoin Core, is it okay if I choose not to relay spam with my own node, or is that going to harm someone's VC investment? We don't want to have to ask permission from anyone. That's why it's very important to run your own node. U.S. government cannot destroy Bitcoin, but dumb Bitcoin normies certainly could. I think this social layer is the largest attack vector and the largest risk for Bitcoin. Relying on third parties exclusively in order to interact with Bitcoin is what ultimately destroys Bitcoin, because you lose out on the censorship resistance, you lose out on the scarcity of it as well, and so you lose out on number go up. What happens to salt when it's lost its saltiness, to use a well-known metaphor? What happens to the corporate vehicle that's been issuing equity and debt to fund the stacking of salt that's lost its saltiness because the narrative of digital gold got pushed a little bit too hard? If Bitcoin is not censorship-resistant money, then why should number go up at all? If Bitcoin becomes captured like every other payment network out there, then it becomes really, rather than number go up technology, it becomes number go down technology, just like the US dollar, because it'll just be just another centralized captured payment network, and we don't want that. How much would Bitcoin be worth in this scenario? Probably something like, just pulling out a number, something like 5% of its current price or worse. So somewhere around, call it $5,000 per coin, maybe much lower than that. As Frank Sinatra used to sing about Bitcoin's store of value versus medium of exchange, you can't have one without the other. So that's how both Bitcoin and MSTR could go to zero. To be clear, I don't think it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. And if we all work together, run our own nodes, and work hard to maintain Bitcoin's culture and its cypherpunk ethos, then this dark future for both Bitcoin and MSTR will be averted. I'm going to put a link here to my latest video from over the weekend that teaches you how to run your own Bitcoin node if you want to figure out how to do this as well. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video, and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.